Inspirational Creatives, episode 252. This episode of Inspirational Creatives is hosted on the podcast platform Libsyn. If you're thinking of starting your own podcast and if you're looking for a podcast host, Libsyn is the podcast hosting platform that the Inspirational Creatives podcast has been reliably hosted on since launching in November 2014. If you'd like to give it a try, I'm pleased to share with you the promo code CREATIVE, which you can use on libsyn.com. That promo code is good for up to 2 months free trial. If you use the code at the beginning of a month, then you'll receive all of that month and the next month free. However, if you use the promo code later in the month, you'll get the remainder of that month free and the following month free too. That promo code is CREATIVE, which you can use on libsyn.com. Welcome to Inspirational Creatives. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence. Join me every Friday as I chat with successful artists, producers, and creative entrepreneurs who share powerful stories and strategies. They can help you to create the life that you want. Listen each week as these inspirational creatives show you how to take your creativity to the next level. You'll learn how to create a sustainable business that inspires others and gives you the financial freedom and lifestyle that you want. Thanks for listening. Make sure you sign up at inspirationalcreatives.com to get free exclusive bonus material. And now, on with the show. Rob here, and welcome to this week's short action episode on the Inspirational Creatives podcast. Today, in this short action episode, we're going to look at how to get unstuck and how to overcome creative resistance that you may be feeling so that you can get back into the swing of the creative work that matters to you the most. Before we get stuck in, if you're new to the Inspirational Creatives podcast, these short action episodes appear every Wednesday and they're designed to help you to take some small form of life-changing action towards living the life that you want. The idea is that with these seemingly small ideas, they can have a big impact on your life, and I hope for you that today's wisdom is no exception. So in today's short action episode, I'd like to share with you the wisdom of writer, healer and teacher Dave Ursillo, who in episode 251 introduced the idea that it is our fear shadow, something called our fear shadow, that can often be the very thing that's blocking us from the creative momentum and creative work that we are born to do. So in the next few minutes, I'd like to share with you what the fear shadow is and how you can spot it so that you can move forward with your creative work. Let's begin by listening to Dave from episode 251, explaining to us this concept of the fear shadow.
This is what I call the fear shadow. And it's not about you being petrified or cowardly, and you just need to put on a brave face and summon courage to get through it, as typical writing advice or creative advice will tell you. They'll tell you just press on, just get through it. But if you're actually really feeling uncomfortable, like the new blog you're starting or the book that you're working on will cause a misunderstanding between your husband or wife or partner and you, because you're asking for more time to sit down and work on your creative outlet, and they feel like they're getting stuck with the short end of taking care of the kids or paying the bills or cleaning the house or whatever the responsibility is. If your practice is creating a feeling of disruption in your life, in the essence of your food, water, shelter, safety, and security, those basic human needs, you're going to start to associate your creative desire as being a cause for disruption in your life, for being a cause of a lack of control in the things that matter most to you.
You can probably relate to some of the typical writing advice that Dave talks about there, which is to simply push harder and press on. But what I believe Dave is talking about here is different. He's talking about us relating our creative endeavours, our creative work, to our basic needs, either by not being met or at the very least being threatened or disrupted. And this being the cause for our inability to get on with the creative work we feel called to do. Dave offers us an example.
This is just one of the three shadows that I talk about and I've come to identify the starting point for a lot of creative people, because Rob, I'm sure you can relate to this. It always begins by how do you start? How do you find the time? Where do you begin? The basic questions that we ask ourselves subconsciously have a lot to do with, how do I fit this into the life that I'm living? How do I add something without taking away things? Because oftentimes we're all feeling too busy, too overwhelmed, inundated by attention span grabbing bells and whistles and social media and all the things that in modern life kind of overwhelm us. So how do we find the time? How do we find the energy to just start to do more of what we want to do without it compromising the rest of our lives?
Often we find ourselves too busy and too overwhelmed. How do we find the time and energy to do more of what's important to us without it compromising the rest of our lives?
And so this is a perfect example of a shadow, of a fear that is probably founded in good reason in how your mind is subconsciously assessing and weighing the pros and cons of doing more of the thing that you want to do, create, express, explore, play, make, endeavor, try, while also worrying that those efforts may cause disruption, discomfort, uncertainty, instability in the course of your day-to-day life.
As Dave suggests, this is how the fear shadow can show up, causing us discomfort, uncertainty, and disruption in our creative lives, ultimately meaning that our most important creative work doesn't get done. So what can we do about it? Well, in episode 251, Dave shared this guidance.
Fastest way to get a deeper understanding of what's actually happening in your creative practice is to simply take a beat, to take a pause, and to ask yourself, to inquire, what am I actually feeling underneath this experience of wherever I'm struggling or spinning in circles or feeling discomfort?
When we find ourselves stuck or spinning around in circles with our creative work, Dave suggests checking in with ourselves to inquire, what exactly is it that we're feeling? Take a pause and ask, what am I feeling underneath this experience or this discomfort?
Usually that's enough to just say, okay, something is happening beneath the surface and I'm feeling resistance, but what kind of resistance is this? And in my writing course, in Unavoidable Writing, I encourage writers to take a clue from what other creatives have been, teaching pretty popularly in attempting to understand if the resistance that they're feeling is normal or an emotional expression of a shadow behavior. So I mentioned earlier the physics of writing, as I call it. Is it just the discomfort that you're feeling of needing to get yourself going? Because if so, that's totally normal. It's the laws of how our world works, of how the universe works. If you're at rest, you need to use force or create momentum against stasis, and sometimes that's going to feel uncomfortable. We also hear, I mentioned Stephen Pressfield in The War of Art in the subsequent books. He takes what I would describe as, being a big fan of his work, he takes a little bit more of, I would say, a masculine, askew perspective on writing being only about struggle, and that resistance, which he uses in kind of the capital R resistance, is kind of like an enemy that you need to fight or war against. And Stephen Pressfield, I don't know him personally, but I know he's a former Marine. I know he's a military history writer. So it kind of makes sense to me that his perspective would be you identify the enemy and you fight it at all costs. Now, with shadow work, which is the essence of identifying the underlying behavior or fear or self-limiting belief that may be causing you struggle in writing, it's much more about looking within and kind of holding a mirror up to yourself to ask yourself what the discomfort is.
Dave suggests asking ourselves in the first instance, are we experiencing some kind of resistance? And if so, what kind of resistance is this? And then to ask, if this is normal resistance, i.e. resistance to simply get ourselves going, Dave suggests that we often need to create momentum to get going, and sometimes that this can feel uncomfortable. However, if we find that the resistance that shows up to be an emotional expression of a shadow behaviour, then although we may find we have some deeper work to do, this can ultimately be good news when it comes to creating fierce momentum behind our creative endeavours. To give you an example, in episode 251, Dave revealed some of the self-limiting beliefs that writers often use to describe the discomfort that they are feeling. And although we're talking about writing and writers here specifically, I believe this is true for all types of creatives.
I list upwards of 40 self-limiting beliefs that I have accumulated over the years that actually create this picture of how many different things that writers will say to themselves, I would say, excuse the discomfort that they're feeling. I'll ask you, dear listener, if you have heard yourself say something like, even quietly as you're working on your creative project, have you said something like, this makes me feel uncomfortable? Or I feel like I'm risking too much by saying this or doing this. Or, you know what, I really have no idea where all of this is going. like, is it even worth it? Is it even worth the effort?
Can you relate with any of these?
So if you're saying something like, this makes me feel uncomfortable, or I feel like I'm risking too much, or especially I don't know where this is going, you may not connect it, as I do, to an underlying script, which is saying that you're actually afraid that your creative practice may be, it's not only causing you an essence of fear or worry or discomfort. I would wager that you're concerned deep down, if subconsciously, that your writing practice, the effort that you're making, the goal that you have, may actually unintentionally create more disharmony or uncertainty or disruption in your life if you keep doing it.
Dave suggests that we sometimes may not be able to connect the fact that our creative goals and practices might be the very thing that are creating the conditions in our lives that prevent us from doing our best creative work. This relates to the fear shadow. Now let me share with you again the clip from the beginning of this short action episode to bring this home and full circle for you.
This is what I call the fear shadow. And it's not about you being petrified or cowardly and you just need to put on a brave face and like summon courage to get through it, as typical writing advice or creative advice will tell you. They'll tell you just press on, like just get through it. But if you're actually really feeling uncomfortable, like the new blog you're starting or the book that you're working on will cause a misunderstanding between your husband or wife or partner and you, because you're asking for more time to sit down and work on your creative outlet, and they feel like they're getting stuck with the short end of taking care of the kids or paying the bills or cleaning the house or whatever the responsibility is. If your practice is creating a feeling of disruption in your life, in the essence of like your like food, water, shelter, safety, and security, like those basic human needs, you're going to start to associate your creative desire as being a cause for disruption in your life, for being a cause of a lack of control in the things that matter most to you.
It's not a case of just pressing on, as so many well-intentioned creative coaches will tell you. It's a case of telling yourself a different story, changing your life script, if you like. This is something that Dave and I went into deeper in part 1 of our chat in episode 251. And it's something you can hear more about in part 2 of my chat with Dave this Friday in episode 253. In the meantime, I highly recommend checking out Dave's new course, Unavoidable Writing, which you can find at unavoidablewriting.com, which goes into the 40 self-limiting beliefs and the business of dealing with our fear shadows in much, much greater depth. In our chat this coming Friday, Dave and I explore the importance of changing your environment and how writing, journaling and changing his own script and story has changed his life too. If on this journey you decide you would like to experience more of Dave's guidance and wisdom and to work with him by participating in his new course, Dave has very kindly offered you the affiliate discount code of ICP30. That's ICP30, which will allow you to receive 30% off his new Unavoidable Writing course, which you can find at unavoidablewriting.com. Good luck taking action today. Let me know how Dave's wisdom resonated with you by dropping me an email at rob@inspirationalcreatives.com. And I look forward to catching up with you again this Friday in part 2 of my chat with Dave Ursillo. I'll talk to you then.
Thanks for listening. Nothing beats the stories and advice of an expert to help you raise your creative game. I would love to know what you thought about today's episode, so don't forget to subscribe in iTunes, where you can rate and review the show. If you like this episode, I invite you to share it on Facebook or Twitter with the one person you know who will benefit from the wisdom shared here today. You can find the show notes on inspirationalcreatives.com/podcast. If you have a burning question or a great idea for a guest, head on over to inspirationalcreatives.com/contact, where you can connect with me there.